Okay, so for the people that are watching the recording, try to put your volume up. I kind of put my voice audio down just because there's like people working outside and I don't want you guys to hear that. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. However, after this call, I will be raising that audio, back to normal. But let's see. Yeah, this is for the recording, bro. This is not for the Zoom. This is for the recording. Anyways, we're going to get started. Because the recording's done on OBS, not on Zoom, just FYI. But let's see. It's been an interesting 2 weeks. Something cool too that we can know is it's really cool trying to see these swing biases begin to play out and just begin to essentially manifest themselves, because the one issue in my opinion with backtesting, right? Backtesting in my opinion is only for you to pretty much test what rules you're going to use, but it's not really, I wouldn't say it's anywhere near the most important thing. And a big reason why I say that is just because whenever you're backtesting your trades, you don't actually, the one aspect that you can't really imitate because it's not really efficient is the whole time part. For example, you can see a move play out M5 and 15 H1, but you didn't see that move play out, in that series of 10 candles, which is, over 2 hours on a 15 minute, which is over 10 hours on an H1. So you can't really test being in a trade unless you're actually in a trade, if that makes sense. So that's why, I think it's really cool that you guys get to see these moves play out, especially now it's on a 2 week basis, not on a 3 day basis. So, I guess that's a good little patience lesson for you. See more people hopping on. But as we discussed 2 weeks ago, I believe we've had this since like down here, which is, 4 weeks ago, is that we were anticipating, potentially a correction back into a 3 day wick, and then hopefully seeing the continuation into the downside, right? And the reason why I like to see this is because that 3 day wick was a failed bullish transition on, this was like, I believe like a month and a half ago, or a month ago. Yeah, a month and a half almost. That was a failed bullish transition, right? That failed, and it gave us, right, the continuation to the downside. So I think that, in my opinion, this should be relatively a decent area to try to anticipate at least a continuation to the downside. And this is what I mean, we're kind of correlating a couple things here. Like, you guys know that after we take out liquidity, we don't necessarily want to look for the immediate continuation, right? But internally, we know that we have been bullish here, right, from a minor major intraday, right? And due to that, we are now seeing, right, the reaction of our POI. So what's interesting here, what I really like to see is, one, today's daily could be extremely bearish, and that's a very good sign. Two, if we start to zoom in, right, you can see that there's an H4 engulfing. You guys know I like to see engulfings. And if we begin to zoom into our M15, M20, right, we've already kind of seen, right, a transition begin, right? We know that after this low, which is pretty much our continuation BOS, let me highlight that for you guys. 1 and 2, right? And then obviously internally, we can see, right, that there is a continuation BOS that led into a new high, then a second continuation BOS. But what's really convincing me that we could see lower pricing is if we zoom in a little bit deeper, and then we've already created, right, an internal leg into the downside. So in my opinion, I am kind of leaning towards, right, the continuation to the downside, and that's really good for the daily closure, right? However, the weekly closure isn't necessarily where we would ideally want it. It's still closing relatively bullish, as you can see, but that could mean that next week we could start seeing opportunities, because I'm not really in any rush for this. I really just want to see the conversion overall play out, because for all that we know, if we zoom back in, right, all this could be is just, the beginning of the pullback, right? And this could be a low, and then we take out, right, a high, and we don't see the transition occur until after we take this out, and then we see the conversion. And then this, in my opinion, is much more of not a probable scenario, but a much more, the effectiveness of this scenario, in my opinion, is more likely than seeing this immediate continuation now. But either way, the bias is still the same. And I'm kind of leaning towards seeing if we're going to react from this M5 POI or not. Like I do want to see what happens, right, with this immediate continuation, just to see if the order flow will sustain itself, and if it doesn't, then we'll probably take out the previous high. And how we take out the previous high will dictate next week if we will be, really converting towards that, medium-term bearish sense, right? Because for the main part, we have been kind of bullish internally over the past like week and a half, as you can see. And I know you guys caught, some really good trades there because there was some really good executions, right? Because after we see, obviously relative equal highs, I'm sorry, but this is technically corrective. So as soon as that is taken out, you can see opportunity 1 and you can see opportunity 2. And these are really, very good opportunities in my opinion that you guys have caught. So, yeah, in terms of a bias, I am kind of leaning towards the bearishness in the longer term, but I just don't necessarily know if the timing is right on the short, medium term. Cool. Next, AUDUSD. I believe we predicted that we would, pretty much find that immediate continuation, so that we could reach the POI that we talked about. We'll come back to the POI, but unfortunately we did not get the immediate continuation, which is kind of what I'm worried about with EU, where we might see, a bit of a bigger move before we see the transition. But as soon as that is invalidated, then technically the internal, right, is bullish, as you can see. So obviously we cannot necessarily predict a bearish move unless we see some sort of confirmation. And you guys see that the news caused the whiplash, and that has eventually, pretty much converted us into a bearish sense. However, right, I'm not too concerned with this. I don't really care too much about that because the objective was the same, and that was to reach X and reach X POI, and that is what we have met, right? That's what I care about, because if we zoom out, then you can see that we are technically at a daily POI. I don't know if we could get a better picture of that, but I do like to see that that was kind of engulfed for the most part. Yeah, 3-day wick. You can see that their 3-day wick. Daily is not, I don't really like how the daily looks in terms of a POI. I don't like the wicks here, but I do like that 3-day wick. And I do like the continuation BOS. So, right, if we're building a case here, then in my opinion, we could see some type of conversion, sometime next week. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is, most importantly, we can see right, the liquidity has been taken. So now what has happened after that? We have tapped into our POI, and we have technically given, some type of transition. And let me explain to you guys what I mean by that. Just clear POI there, clear reaction. Reaction can probably be confirmed from an M5, M3 standpoint, right? You can see it on M5, you can probably see it on M3, right? You can see continuation BOS, right? Confirm reaction of the POI. However, the counter POI sustained itself. So, in my opinion, this is a form of order flow disruption. And if that is the case, then realistically, I would really like to see, right, the inefficiency be met and hopefully see the conversion to the upside. And this would technically be attempt like number 1 for the bullish transition, only because we're reacting off of POI and we have the order flow disruption here. So, not to mention that we aren't really bouncing off of anything. I don't see any strong POIs that we're bouncing off of. And, right, the hour has been closing very bullish. The H4 has also been pretty bullish. So I do want to see if, we will give, a decent pullback, because for all we know, this could also just scribble here and then continue. So I would really like to see that deep retracement. And if you do get the deep retracement and the reaction, then we might not necessarily have a second deep reaction. So any opportunity there just looks pretty appealing in my opinion, just because of how we built the case from the daily. And we know that there's already been a failed transition from high, low retracement, confirm reaction, continuation BOS. So now all I'm looking for is a transition so that we can, look for that move into the upside. So next thing, EURUSD. This is relatively the same as AU. You guys can kind of eyeball this, but coming back into what we had talked about before, we know that we had pretty much the inverse POI of DXY, and what matters here, right, as we can now see, is that we have reacted in the internal POI of that, and I believe that's a wick as well. Excuse me. No, it wasn't a wick. It was a 2-day. So the 2-day, you can see the bounce, but it's not necessarily what's important here. What's important here is pretty much the same thing with AUDUSD, where we're seeing the reaction be confirmed off of the POI, and we're seeing the internal leg be formed. So in my opinion, I don't see this going any deeper. We can see that this is, you know, bouncing here, and I do see this pretty much catapulting from here, in my opinion, especially with how we're bouncing right now, and how I derive that. Obviously, continuation BOS, right? We obviously see the continuation, but we see the internal leg, so that is technically a discount, as you can see, right? Borderline equilibrium, but it is technically a discount. So I am really leaning towards that bullish sense here, and this one could just, you know, run off from here. So I don't know if DXY is going to give us that M5 POI that we talked about. And same thing here, like we don't know if this turbulence point will sustain itself or if we'll see the deeper retracement. But just to note, we will note, right, the turbulence point here. And the reason why I said the turbulence point is because you can see that we're kind of stalling on M1. So we'll see how this bounces off of here, and that is that. Gold, this one I'm kind of staying away from. I don't know if I'm bullish on this. I don't know. Only because, one, the POI that we had mentioned has broken through. However, like there is like a standout thing here where, although we're not in bullish structure, this is, right, a failed bearish to bullish to bearish transition. So this could very well be another type of POI here, and this could be what we play off of now from here. And if that is the case, well, you can see that, right, we've already had our transition, right, the continuation BOS. That doesn't mean I would buy here, no, but you see the internal leg, low into high, the retracement, the invalidation was not met. So you can see that that's playing out right now. So that's the only case I can build for the bullish sense. But the only thing that I can really think of with the bearish sense is that if we're looking at this from just notable structure here, we can see that this is technically unwillingness, right? So high into low, continuation BOS. And for all we know, this could be some sort of turbulence point. However, there is some sort of POI with the invalidation there, and that's the only case that I can build for a bearish sense, whereas this would just literally be, you know, a retracement into the downside. But the macro is technically still up, so I just find that harder to justify, just because, as we can see, this is only gone up, so can't really go against that in the longer term. But right, this is pretty much the only case that I can build for that bullish sense, and if it works out, cool, and you know, we go from there. US30, this one I haven't looked at all, only because I just don't like the price action. I think it's been super messy. I don't think anything's really been clear in terms of direction. But if you were to ask me what, you know, I would bet the money on, I would definitely say more of a bearish sense, which is kind of misleading because we're bearish on this. So the only real issue that I have here is, let's actually remove that because we really have not moved since the last call. Right, low into high. Is that within this structural range, right? We've tested the high, we've tested the low, right? And yes, you could argue that there is a POI here. You could argue that, but where is the direction is the real question. Is And the only reason why I say that is you can argue right, that there is a bullish reaction here. However, there's just no clear structural range as to what the direction could be. So for all we know, all this could be is just, you know, this wanting to become bearish and just failing to become bearish. And once we clear this POI, if we were to clear this POI, then in my opinion, we are full on bullish. Because if you zoom out, you could argue, like if you zoom in, you could argue that you could be bearish. But if you zoom out, then in my opinion, you can argue that you're bullish. Because one, you have the continuation BOS. Two, you have the bearish conversion here based on the POI, right? And now the continuation for the bearish side is really, really struggling based on that, you know, pretty much no man's land range there. So if we are to break through this POI, break through this internal level of structure, right? Then realistically, we can be bullish. However, right, for some people that trade US30, there has already been the opportunity, right? Because you can see, right, three things that happen to POI, open 50% liquidity grab. That reacted technically. I don't really like considering a liquidity grab of a POI to be a reaction. However, that did cause a continuation BOS immediately after, so technically it would be considered a reaction. And that, you know, failed. So currently the order flow that is in play is technically bullish. This is what's in play right now. And if this manages to break this counter POI, then we're looking at, you know, a potentially big bullish move, which is more so what I would lean on. Just based on what we're talking about right now, I wouldn't really lean on the bearish side, just because of just the overall attempt to become overall bearish is kind of stalling. So I don't really see the sustainability there. But that kind of covers that. DXY down, AUDUSD up, EURUSD up, gold potentially up, and this potentially up as well. Potentially. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? We have 20 people on today. We can pretty much sit here for like another 30 minutes if you guys want, minimum. So does anybody have any questions? How have you guys been doing? Any cool topics? I see you guys are active as well. I do like that. I do read the chat every day for you guys' information. I may not answer to everything, but I do read the chat every day. Cool. Any case studies today? Anything you guys want to cover today? And the London meetup is coming up. 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. That should be fun. Could you show me the gold? What do you mean show you the gold? Look, guys, these are biases, right? But you guys have to still do your own biases. I hope you guys know that. If you guys are just looking to copy off of these zooms, that's unacceptable. Wrong one, sorry. But cool, any questions? Anybody? Yeah, meetup would be cool. But let's also make something straight. Like, I'm not coming here to like sit down and teach you guys anything. Like, that's not what I'm coming to UK for. I'm coming to UK for a fucking vacation. I'm not going out there to worry about work, anything like that. I'm just looking to meet some cool people. I'm not going to be sitting there teaching you guys stuff in person. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do that. Yeah, man, I'm not gonna fly out there just to teach you guys. Like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Looking forward to meeting you guys and just having a good time, you know? From what I know, London, France. I mean, London, Paris. I don't know where we'll be going in London because we're gonna be there for 3 days. So I don't know. I don't like that you guys are saying LOL because I think that's what you guys were expecting, and that's no. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. Can you reanalyze? No, you can look at the recording tomorrow, bro, or later today. Yeah, I'm not doing no 10-hour flight, and we're not landing in the UK. We're landing in France, so we're gonna have to. We're not. We're gonna have to. What's it called? We're gonna have to do that 4-hour train ride. I think that apparently goes like underwater, which is fucking cool. Yeah, whatever that is. So we have to go through a 10-hour flight, and then we have to go through a 4-hour train ride. Yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll definitely have some drinks there. I don't know. I'll think of cool stuff to bring. Yeah, because I probably won't even be posting about like the meetup or anything like that. This is literally just for us to meet. I don't care to put it on social media or anything like that. I don't care to use that as promotion because we're not even selling anything in the brand anymore. Um, just want to meet you guys. Mini chess set. Yeah, me and Sergio were looking into that, seeing if we could get like a little chess set. That's kind of portable. So it'll be fun. When Texas meetup? Why should we have a Texas meetup? Better question, yeah. Why should we have a Texas meetup? Like what is the whole gist on meetups? I don't understand. Cuz like if I were to think about it from like my POV, I would run a meetup for promotional purposes and or monetary gain. You know what I'm saying? For you want to beat you at chess? No, because I'm not good at chess. Free pint. I was serious about the Texas meetup. Like, what's the goal? What's the objective? Like, what's the point? Like, I do want to know because like if you can justify it, then you know, if you can justify it, then maybe. Cool. Does anybody have any questions then? No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking what's the point? Cool. So any questions, anybody? Yeah, guess that was right about that. This one, not so much. Yeah, go for it. Okay. This is a mistake I see all the time. You're selling at a complete discount. In general, yeah, I see this a lot. I see pretty much people trying to catch the internal continuation, which is technically a premium, right? If they are to catch it, right? But it eventually fails because they're catching the discount. They're catching the end of the move. Like, you shouldn't be looking for continuations here. You should be looking for them either here, right, or somewhere before the liquidity has been taken. Because this isn't technically invalid. It's not only about what you're trading, but it's about where you're trading it too. Right? Like, Sebastian's on the call. Sebastian knows this. Right, so the problem isn't how you're entering, it's where you're entering. Because nothing falls forever and nothing goes up forever. And that's kind of why I pretty much emphasize on transitions, because if you emphasize on transitions, then you're catching a move as it begins, right? Not as it ends, if that makes sense. Because who's to say this isn't just a whiplash? Like, if you're looking at this, if it's in a discount and you're seeing this type of transition, instead of making the argument that it's a continuation to the downside, why not make an argument that it's not only already a continuation BOS, but who's to say it's not a double whiplash? And these whiplashes really only happen at the end of a move, right? But that's kind of like a hindsight thing. So I would say really just focus on where you're trading, because you can try to catch a transition, but if it's at the end of the move, then you're never going to win. Because look, you could already see that this move has already came down. Yeah. Bearish to bullish or bullish to bearish. Because that's, if like this is, I was talking to one-on-one. I was on a one-on-one and we were talking about this as well. It's like, question, do you guys think that we're Wyckoff traders, yes or no? Would you consider yourself to be a Wyckoff-ian trader, yes or no? Would you consider people in the group to be, yes or no? Everybody, yes or no? You guys are listening. Okay, you're saying yes. Why? And if it's no, say no, and why? Thank you. Simple. Based on our entry? What do you mean based on our entry? What do you mean? 5 answers, but there's 18 people on the call. 19. Are we Wyckoff traders? Yes or no, and why? And you said yes based on our entry. So I said why? What do you mean? Like I don't understand what you mean by based on our entry. Like ophthalmology. Show me some examples, because if you're seeing schematics this consistently, I'm curious to see. You wait for the POI, but then again, till I find any Wyckoff schematic to support my entry. So what if you don't get a schematic? Because from what I've checked, they rarely happen. At least from my end, at least from how I see it, they rarely happen. Like no schematic here, no schematic here, no schematic here either. Like you see transitions happen without the schematic. Feel free to unmute your mics too. I think it's easier to just unmute your mics instead of just trying to type everything out. But yeah, anyway, show me some examples of that, but it's taking too long, so I'm gonna just move on. The reason why I say that, the reason why I asked that is because of what Lewis said here. Where is this? Here. Right, because all Wyckoff is the study of ranges to acquire higher risk to reward. And on his basis, I believe it was 1 to 3. Like if a schematic occurred, then you're technically like buying here, SL here, and you're looking at like a 1 to 3. I think that's like what the original approach was. I don't know. It's been years since I've read that, so I could be wrong. But that was like the original point, was to study a range in order to anticipate the highest possible risk to reward, which at the time for him was 1 to 3, which isn't bad, right? But right, the entire point, what I gathered out of that was, if you can study the ranges and if you can study what happens inside of the ranges, then realistically you can catch moves before they happen. So now how do you study a range? So that's where, how do you articulate what happens within a range? Well, that's order flow, and then obviously the process of mitigation. And when you combine that, then you get a transition. And when you understand transitions, then that's if you can catch it in a certain spot, then realistically you're looking at potentially a new move, whether it's a change of direction or if it's a continuation. Continuation, change of direction. So that's all I got from that, because if you rely solely on phases and what can happen, then you're limiting yourself, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you're limiting yourself to, maybe hardly ever seeing these play out perfectly. Because at the end of the day, this is a schematic. This is not technically something you just want to copy paste everywhere, which is something that we kind of used to do. And I just think that's an incorrect approach to using something that isn't absolute, at least now. But anyways, the reason why I don't fill these out anymore is because it's much more efficient to understand, a couple of things. I'm gonna say it's like three things: solidified points, how to find POIs, right, and breaks of structure. Pretty much that's all really you need to know to read a transition or read a range. And we can come back here so I can show you guys. Right, continuation BOS, CBOS, solidified low. This is the pullback. So we know that we're still aiming for the previous structure. So now I know that, let's say this is the high, into the low, into retracement. Now you have here. So we have an unsubstantial new low, which can justify bearish bullish position 1 or 2. However, right, if we are unable to break the range, then we're technically never bullish. That's your sign of strength, aka here. So technically you are still bearish even if you have an unsubstantial new low, but because you have an unsubstantial new low, the probability of you having a bigger trade is much less, it's much more uncommon. So although we do see the continuation right here, solidified high, solidified low there. So solidified high, that means that we're technically still aiming for a previous low. Once the previous low is met, now you see an unsubstantial new low, and then you see the sign of strength, right? But sometimes you'll get something like this, or sometimes you'll actually get the retracement into the upside. So it's all you need to know. Solidified points, know how to understand breaks of structure, and then obviously, you're how to understand mitigations and stuff like that. But all of that is just trying to articulate a range in order for you to predict or anticipate which direction it will go. And if you get it right, then you're more than likely looking at a bigger term trade because you're catching a move as it begins, not as it ends. So that's kind of like the whole gist of it. But yeah, that's kind of the whole reasoning why, it's important to know where you're trading and not just what you're trading, because a model is kind of useless if it's not used in the correct places, if that makes sense. So let's see, any more questions, any more studies you guys want to go through? So there's different ways to go about it too, Christian. You could say, I will not take sell continuations in a minor intraday discount, or if I am looking at an immediate continuation within a minor intraday discount, then I should look for a hedge as well, because either way I'm going to win, right? And then that's where, you win just because of the whole theory of invalidation points. So yeah, so just a couple of ways to, look at that. Hopefully that makes sense. Any more questions? Anything else you guys want to show me? Let's see if there's anybody in the chat right now. Ah, that's cool. If you weren't looking at the chat, there's this thing here where you can pretty much get back your commissions, which is really cool. Which I don't understand how that works, because I thought that's how the broker makes their money. So at least you could fund your account if you blow it, right? That's cool. Yeah, seems like that's gonna continue there. Yeah. A little bit late to the party. I don't understand that. Yeah, I don't either, bro. I don't either. I mean, I like if I look at it from like a principle standpoint, it's like the same thing as like people giving you rebates for your receipts, you know, for like gas receipts, grocery receipts. Kind of the same concept, I'm assuming. Oh, okay. Okay. I guess that worked out. Cool. Does anybody have any more questions, or else I'll probably wrap this up here soon. Wyckoff, the OGRR trader. Yeah, I guess so. The thing is, that isn't what matters, though. Well, not fully. What matters is winning the trade. Yeah, it does. Definitely does. No, RR is not an illusion. It's the shit on Instagram that's illusion. There's no illusion to RR. All it means is risk to reward. That's all that it means. The illusion, I think, is a misconception. Yeah, you see, yeah, RR saved you this week. Yeah, that makes sense because it does matter at the end of the day. I'm just saying it's not, in my opinion, the priority. But yeah, I guess you guys can see why I'm like getting away from that as well because I think it's really important too for you guys to see these biases play out. Yeah, I don't think it's dying. I just think it's like there's always like cycles. Like for example, here in Dallas, like you don't see people talk about FX anymore. You see people talk about fucking solar. That's all you see now. Like, oh, go solar. Like, oh, join the team. Like, oh, make commissions. Like, it's all commission based. I know how the kind of thing works. Just because I have a friend that does it, and it's super corny, super corny. And like, I make it clear to them, like, yo, like this shit's corny. Like, why are you doing this? And I mean, to each their own, right? Yeah, definitely. I like that. Lost two trades today, but third one made up for it. Also gave me my percentage growth. Yeah, cool. That's cool. It is the new trend. Give it like 5 years. Next thing is like nuclear energy at homes because you never know. Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much what they do. Well, actually, the people here in Dallas that I know do it. They literally door to door. Door to door job when you were younger. Couldn't pay me to do that again. Yeah, man. If you asked me to go door to door, I would say hell no. I'll stay broke. I'm good. Definitely that fear of rejection was a great thing though. Like for example, I don't think I've had like a job like that besides like this where I had to like talk to a lot of people, but it's always like to a screen, so it's not that bad. I cannot imagine having to talk to a bunch of people in person every single day and then getting rejected like 90% of the time. Yeah, man. I cannot. I cannot. Personally, I'd be offended if somebody told me to fuck off. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, man. Of course. Um, cool. Does anybody have any more questions or anything they want to go through? If not, I'll probably wrap this up right now. I think we were semi-productive today. Alright, then, guys. Appreciate you guys for hopping on. I'll definitely make sure to upload this ASAP. But